So welcome everybody to this latest revision video 162 Maths. In this video we'll be continuing with the theme of revision or revising for the GCSE Maths 2022 Foundation exam, and in this video we'll be focusing on the algebra section of paper 2. Now as always there'll be a copy of the questions for you to have an attempt at before watching this video by clicking on the link in the description. So before we get started on some example questions, let's just have a breakdown of the algebra section from paper 2 on the foundation paper. So looking at the equations, again, it's looking at linear. So with linear equations, what you're looking for is looking at equations with solving equations with single x's. And these could either be one step, two step with brackets, etc. Now when it comes to manipulation, so equivalent expressions, that's going to be basically looking at simplifying expressions and looking at, so both including fractions, and so also looking at collecting like terms, which kind of leads us into looking at terms. So I would say that goes into there. Multiplying out, that looks at expanding brackets. And these could be in the form of single or double. And then factorization, so factorizing with regards to single brackets. And then moving on to coordinates. Now coordinates, points on a line, I'd say all of these three kind of lie in together. Now when it comes to coordinates, it's just recognizing that you're looking at x and y. So the first coordinate is the distance going across and the second coordinate is the distance going up or down. Then you're looking at midpoint. Now there is a formula to work out the midpoint of two coordinates. Now this tends to be more at high level, but basically the midpoint is when you add the two x ordinates together and then divide them by 2, and the y ordinate is where you add the two y ordinates together and divide it by 2, and that will give you the midpoint between two coordinates. And again, we'll go through some example questions in later on in this video. When it comes to points on a line, so it's just recognizing how to check whether points lie on a line. So it's just a case substituting the coordinate into the equation, but also finding the x-intercept where the line crosses the x-axis, and that's going to be basically when y equals 0, and the y-intercept, and that's when you substitute x equals 0 into the equation. Now when it comes to intercept of a line, so there again could be linked in with finding the coordinates. So you may have to plot a line and a line's already been drawn and you need to find out where its intercepts. Gradient of a line and equation of a line for the foundation paper will always include y equals mx plus c, where m is the gradient and c is the y-intercept. So it's really important that you're able to both use this equation, also plot the equation, and also work in reverse of when you've got a graph drawn, you need to then find the equation of a line as well. So a little reminder that before we start working through some example questions covering these algebra topics, that you can download the copy of these questions by clicking on the link in the description below. So looking at question 1, we're looking at solving linear equations. So question 1 says solve 7x equals 56. So for this, all we need to do is divide by 7. So 56 divided by 7 is going to give me an answer of 8. And moving on to question 2, again solving x minus 8 equals 5. So we take the 8 over by adding 8. So 5 plus 8 gives me 13, which is our last option. Moving on to question 3, it says solve this. Now when you've got a fraction, you always want to get rid of whatever's being added or subtracted first. So looking at this here, we want to take the 9 over to add 9. So then we've got x over 3 equals 21. Then look at the 3, so we multiply by 3, giving us an answer of 63. Then looking at question 4, so here we've got a negative y. So here, what we need to do here is a couple of things. So you're either looking for a number that when you subtract from 25 gives you 18, in which then it's just a case of filling in the missing number. So here it's going to be 7, so y equals 7. Another alternative is, let me just write out the question, is to take the y over to the other side. So I end up with 25 equals y plus 18. And then from this, we can then take away the 18, giving us our answer of 7. Whichever which way you do it, as I said, you're worth 1 mark. If you write 7, you've got 4 marks. Moving on to question 5, it says that a line has the equation of y equals x plus 3, and the question is asking write down the coordinates of the point where the line intersects the y-axis. Now, where it intersects the y-axis, what you want to do here is substitute x equals 0 into the equation. So if x equals 0, what will y equal? Well, I'm going to end up with y equals 0 plus 3, so it's just 3, and there is our final answer. For where it intersects the x-axis, what you want to do here is substitute y equals 0. So if I make y equals to 0, I end up with 0 equals x plus 3. So take the 3 over, so it becomes minus 3. So I've got x equals minus 3. So the coordinate then is going to be minus 3 and 0. Moving on to question 6, it says the graph below is used to convert between temperature in degrees Fahrenheit and temperature in degrees Celsius. And the question is asking us to use the graph to convert 40 degrees Fahrenheit into Celsius. So what I need to do here is find 40 on F, and then once it hits the diagonal line, I then want to project across, and I make that out to be around about 4. Now in the answers, if you wrote any answer between 4 and 5, you would get the full marks. Moving on to the next part, it says at one temperature T, the number of degrees Celsius is double the number of degrees Fahrenheit. The graph of C equals 2F can be drawn to help find this temperature. On the grid opposite, draw the graph of C equals 2F for the values of F is between minus 25 and 25. You may use this table to help you. So because they want the range of minus 25 to 25, I need to have the biggest value as being 25. And what's the next easiest number to substitute in? It's going to be 0. So then using these numbers, if I then substitute that in, I get 2 times F, which 2 times 0, which is 0, and 2 times 25 is 50. So what I now need to do is to plot this graph. So I need to plot minus 25 and minus 50. So minus 25 is there, 50 is there. So I'm going to put a point there. It's going to go through the origin, and 25, 50 is there. So then what I then need to do is, accurately as possible, is draw a line through those 2 points. Those 3 points, I should say. It can be a little bit fiddly, and you want to try and use thin line rather than a big chunky one like I've got here. And we've got this there. And so what the question is asking, at what point of F is it going to be double? So for this, what I need to do is find the intersection point, which is here, which again is another label on the axes that on the revision list. So I make that out to be minus 12. And what coordinate is that point there? Well, I say it's minus 12, minus 25. So if I just go down here and write down minus 12 degrees Celsius. Then moving on to question 7. So here we're solving this linear equation. So we want to get x by itself. So we do that by getting rid of the 11 first. So that's going to be plus 11. So 6x equals 24. Then we get rid of the 6 by dividing by 6. So we get x equals 4. Then moving on to question 8. So here we're writing the equivalent fraction. So for this, you've got to recognize that you've got 3 different terms. Now, what we then got to look at is what of each of these things that have been highlighted got in common. Well, they haven't got a letter in common, but they have got a number in front. So what we want to look at then is the smallest. We want to divide all those numbers by a common factor. So here we can divide all those 3 numbers by 3. So that becomes a 1, that becomes a 2, and that becomes a 1. And that makes this fraction look like x squared over 2x squared plus 1, which is our third option. Now moving on to question 9, it says that you are given that p equals m plus 5. Which of the following is true? So here we want to make m the subject. So rearranging this, if I took the 5 over to the other side, I'd end up with m equals p minus 5, which is our last option. And again, if I wanted to make sure, see if this one is true, then it'll be m Well, it says which one, so I don't really need to bother with the other one. But even if I did, then P minus M would equal 5. Moving on to B, it says 2C minus 3 equals 13. So we want to take the 3 over by adding the 3. So we're left with 2C equals 16. So then C equals 8. Moving on to question 10, it says that circle the expression that is equivalent to 1 plus x plus 1 squared. So it's recognizing that this is a double bracket question. And if I expand the brackets, I get x squared minus 1x plus 1, which gives me x squared minus 2x plus 1, which is our last option. And then with question 11, it says expand and simplify fully. So here, if I use my loops, I get 8c plus 12, and then minus, now we've got minus 1 in front of that bracket. So always be careful when you've got negatives in front of brackets. So it's minus 1 times 5c, which is minus 5c, and minus 1 times minus 1, which is positive 1. And then combining the letters together, we get 8c minus 5c, which is 3c, and 12 plus 1, which is 13. Moving on to question 12. So here we're expanding out and multiplying double brackets. So here I've got x times x, which is x squared, x times minus 1, which is minus 1x, and then 5 times x is 5x, and 5 times minus 1 is minus 5. Then combining these two things together, I end up with x squared plus 4x minus 5. Then moving on to question 13, and then expanding this bracket out. So here I'm going to end up with 4 times 3, which is 12. X squared times x is x cubed, and then 4 times 5 is 20, and then I've got x squared. So this is the expression I'm looking for, which is my second option. Moving on to question 14, it says expand this. So again, very, very similar to the previous question. So 3 times 2 is 6. X squared times x is x cubed, minus 3 times 5, which is 15. I've also got the x squared, and that there is the last option. Then for 15, it says factorize fully. So looking at what these two things got in common, we're looking at the numbers. The common factor there is 2, and looking at the letters, and the smallest power of x is just a single x. So here I've got 2. What do I need to multiply 2x to get 2x squared? Well, I need another x. And what do I need to multiply 2 to get 6? Well, I need a 3. And I've got an x and I want an x, so that's fine. So then the final answer then is 2x and x plus 3 in brackets. Moving on to question 16, it says simplify fully. So here I need to join the a squareds, the a's, and the constants. So 3a squared minus 1a squared is 2a squared. Then I've got 7a plus 8a, which is 15a. And then I've got 3 take away 4, which is minus 1. There's my final answer. Then for B, factorizing this. So again, looking at the numbers, the smallest or the biggest common factor between 24 and 20 is 4. And then looking at the letters, the smallest power of y is y. So then here, 4 times what gives me 24, which that's going to be 6. I need another y. And 4 times 5 gives me 20. And I've got a y and I need a y, so that's fine. So there is my final answer. Moving on to question 17, again, factorizing. So looking at these, there's no common factor with regards to letters, so it's got to be a number. So what number goes into both 15, 35, and 40? Well, it's going to be 5. So here I've got 3x plus 7y minus 8z. And then for question 18, factorizing fully again. So common factor between the numbers is going to be 2. And they've both got x, so I could take an x out. So it's going to be 3x minus 7. So 2x and 3x minus 7 is my final answer. Moving on to question 19, it says multiply out. So here I'm going to do 3 times 2x, which is 6x, and 3 times minus 7, which is 21. Factorizing again, what's common about these two things here? Well, it's going to be x. So then what do I have to multiply x to get x squared? Well, that's going to be x, and I need an 8. Then moving on to question 20, it says circle the point that lies on the curve of y equals x squared minus 4x plus 1. Now for this, I notice that every single equation coordinate I've been given as an option has x equals minus 1. If I then sub x equals minus 1 into this equation, then what I end up with is minus 1 squared, which is 1, minus plus 4 plus 1, which gives me 6. So I'm looking for the coordinate of minus 1, 6, which is my fourth option. Moving on to question 21, it says circle the midpoint. So again, to find the midpoint, all you need to do here is add the two x ordinates, so 10 plus 2 divided by 2, which is 6, and then do the same with the y ordinates, so 13 plus 1 divided by 2, which is 7. So I'm looking for the coordinate of 6, 7, which is my third option. Then for question 22, it says circle the point that lies on the line of x minus 3 equals 0. So here, if I just make x the subject, I will end up with x equals minus 3. And so I'm looking for x equals minus 3, which is our last option. Well, actually, it should be plus 3. So let me just correct that. It should be here x equals 3. So it's going to be our first option. Moving on to question 23. It says it gives me the coordinates of A and B are points on a straight line of A, B, C, D. AB equals BC, which equals CD, and the question is asking me to find the coordinate of D. Now for this, what you need to do is to find the distances between each of the letters. So looking at the x ordinates, I can see that this point here is going to be 6. So that means that the numbers are going to be going along up in 6s along the x-axis. And then doing the same with the y ordinate. So this y ordinate for A is at 2. So at B, it's at 5. So that means that it's going to be going up in plus 3s. So the next y ordinate, if I add 3, is going to be 8. And the next y ordinate is going to add another 3, which is going to be 11. So this coordinate of D is going to be at 18, 11. Then looking at question 24, it says P is for 9 and Q is minus 2, 1. Circle the midpoint. So again, adding the two x ordinates. So I've got 4 plus minus 2 divided by 2, which equals 1. And 9 plus 1 divided by 2 equals 10 divided by 2, which is 5. So I'm looking for the coordinate of 1, 5, which is our first coordinate, or first option, I should say. Then moving on to question 25, it says A is at 2, 12, B is at 8, 2. Circle the midpoint. So again, adding these two numbers up, I get 10 over 2. Oh, up in there. So 10 over 2. And then the y ordinates is going to be 14 over 2. So I'm looking for 5 and 7. And so, which is my third option. Then question 26, it says, what is the coordinate of A? Well, A is at 4, 1. And then says to plot and label the point B, which is at minus 2. So minus 2 across, 4 up. So this point here is going to be B. Then for question 27, it says points A, B are shown on a centimeter grid. Write down the coordinates of the midpoint of AB. So AB, the midpoint is going to be here. And that coordinate there is 3, 5. It then says point C is plotted so that y is 3. So the y ordinate is 3 and ABC is a right angle triangle. So if it's along the y equals 3, so it's going to be along this line here, which is y equals 3. And it's got to be a right angle triangle. So we're looking at points being either here, here, or here. If I just call this one C1, this one C2, and this one C3. Question's just asking me to write down those coordinates. So here it's going to be at 1, 3, and 5. Then looking at question 28, it says that a line has the equation of y equals 4x minus 5. What is the gradient of the line? Well, the gradient of the line is the coefficient of x, or the number that's in front of x. So in this equation, it's positive 4, so it's our third option. Then says, what is the y-intercept of the line? Well, the y-intercept is always the number or the constant at the end. So here it's minus 5, which is our first option. Moving on to question 29, it says the equation of the line is y equals 2x minus 1. Circle the point that is the intercept with the y-axis. So again, we're looking for -1, so that's the y-ordinate. So we're looking for 0, -1, which is our first option. Question 30 then says that a straight line has the equation of y equals 6 minus 2x. Circle the gradient of the line. Well, here the number of x's I've got is -2, so the gradient is -2. Then question 31, it says that the equation of a straight line is 2y equals 3x plus 5. Now, to read the gradient or the y-intercept of an equation of a line, you must have y the subject. So here I need to divide everything by 2. So if I just write down the equation, so if I divide everything by 2, I end up with y equals 3 over 2x plus 5 over 2. And the gradient is going to be positive 3 over 2. So it's our second option. Moving on to question 32, it says here is a straight line, and the question is asking us to use the graph to work out the value of x when x equals 8. Now that is a bit of an error because it should be when y equals 8. So let me just correct that. And so what this question is asking me to do is to draw a horizontal line through y equals 8, and it's asking me to find the y value. So it's asking me to find what this value here is going to be. Now, they would accept any answer between 2.3 to 2.5. So any number. Well, make sure you only give one number. Do not give them a range. So it's going to be any number. So either 2.3, 2.4, 2.5. It's going to be fine. The next question then says work out the gradient of the line. So what we need to do here is we need to draw some form of a triangle. A right angle triangle. So I'm going to pick where it crosses both of these axes. So if I draw this triangle here, then that's got a height of 4 and a base of 0.8. So the gradient is going to be 4 divided by 0.8, which I make out to be 5. So here gradient is going to be 5. Now it's really important that when you are working out the gradient, draw a triangle, make sure you can see the triangle, and it's the base up divided by the base across, and make sure you're mindful of the units of the scale. Don't just count the squares because that may not necessarily give you the correct answer. Moving on to question 33, it says that a straight line passes through O, which is the origin, and to 6. Let me just move that up just so that we can see that question a little bit better. And it says circle the equation of the line. So for this, I know that it crosses the y-axis at 0, so there's going to be no number. The next thing for me to then do is to work out the gradient. Now the height of this is going to be the y-ordinate, which is 6, and the base is going to be 2, because that coordinate there is at 2, 6. Then working out the gradient, which is 6 divided by 2, which is 3. So that means then I'm looking for y equals mx plus c. So m is 3 and c is 0 because it crosses at the origin. So I'm looking for y equals 3x, which is my third option. Moving on to question 34, it says the graph of y equals 4 minus x for the values of x between -2 and to 5 is shown on the grid. On the grid, draw the graph of y equals 2x minus 5 between the values of -2 to 5. So for this, what we need to do is set up a table of values. And I would usually go for 3 very simple numbers. So I'm going to go for 0, 1, and 2. So from this, I'm just going to substitute the numbers in. So for this number here, I'm going to do 2 times 0 minus 5, which is -5. This one here, I'm going to do 2 times 1, take away 5, which is -3. And for this one here, I'm going to do 2 times 2, minus 5, which is -1. And then these are the coordinates I then need to plot. So I'm going to put 0 minus 5, which is here. I'm going to put 1 minus 3, which is there, and 2 minus 1, which is there. And then what I then need to do is accurately draw a straight line through those points. Now again, make sure that your line doesn't just not only go through the points that you've plotted, but it has to go through the range of where x is between -2 and 5. So basically, when you're drawing your diagonal line, just make sure it goes to the either end of your set of axes just to play it safe. And again, you want to try and be as accurate as possible. Again, on the computer, it's not the easiest. that we get, but I say let's just call it there. So the next question then says use your graph to solve this. So basically what you're looking for is the x-ordinate of the intersection point, and that is at 3. So question 35 says complete the table for y equals 3x plus 1. So again, all we're doing here is substituting these x values into this equation. So for this value here, I'm going to do 3 times minus 2, which is minus 6, plus 1, which is minus 5. This one here, I'm going to do 3 times 0, which is 0, plus 1, which is 1. This one here, it's 3 times 2, 6, plus 1, which is 7. And the last one, which is 3 times 3, which is 9, plus 1, which is 10. And then all I then need to do is plot those points. So minus 3 is at minus 8. So just minus 3, minus 8, which is there. Then minus 2, 5. Minus 2, minus 5, which is not there. And it should be a little bit further up. You want to try and be as accurate as possible. So up there. And then minus 1, minus 2. So minus 1, minus 2. It's a little bit easier to plot. At 0, it's at 1. At 1, it's at 4. And 2, it's at 7. And at 3, it's at, and then all I then need to do is to draw a straight line through those points. And again, unlike what I'm doing on the screen, you want to try and make sure that you're using a pencil. Just go through all the points that you've plotted, and also definitely to either end of the grid that you've been given, just to play it safe, like so. Then the question then says solve where x equals 3x plus 1. So here, if I then plot y equals x, so if I then, for this question, you want to plot y equals x. So at 1, 2, 2, oh, that's minus 2, so go for changing that. So here we've got 2, 2, and then at 0, 0, and then minus 2, minus 2, and go from there. Doesn't, right, I think that point there just looks a bit off. There. Again, that still doesn't look right, so let me just correct that. Yours should be a lot easier to plot. And then if I join that line like so, and just making sure that your line does extend like so. And the question is just purely asking us as to where the two lines intersect, and I reckon that that there is at minus half. So then moving on to question 36. So again, very similar to the previous question that we've done. So here we just got to substitute the numbers in. So for this one, I'm going to do 3 times minus 2, which is minus 6, plus 2, which is going to give me minus 4. This value here is going to give me 2, and this value here is going to give me 8. Then if I plot those points, so again, just making sure I've got a couple of the coordinates. So minus 2, minus 4 is here. Minus 1, 0, 2, 1 at 5, and 2, it's at 8. So again, much nicer grid. Definitely going to be easier for us to join and plot the points. And again, what you want to make sure that you're doing is that your line goes to right to the extremes of the grid, right to the edge. With this, I'm just going to extend it a little bit further. So, and then the question then says, work out the gradient of this. Well, I don't need to draw any triangles. I can just do it purely from the equation. So here it's going to be a gradient of 3. Now moving on to our last question, which says work out the equation of a line AB. So for this, what I need to do first is to work out the gradient. If I pick 2 nice coordinates, so they're my 2 coordinates. The height of that triangle is 3, the base of that is 2, so that means that the gradient of this line is going to be negative because it's going downwards, 3 over 2. Now the y-intercept is at 3. So then using y equals mx plus c, where this is my m value, this is my c value, I end up with y equals minus 3 over 2x plus 3. And there is my final answer for A. Then moving on to the last question, part B, it says work out the equation of a line passing through 2 minus 3 and is parallel to the line of y equals 3x plus 4. Well, for this, what we need to do is we need to use y equals mx plus c. Now, if it's parallel, it means that the gradient of this has got to be the same as this one. So here what we've got is m must equal 3. So then using the 2 as our x value and minus 3 as our y value, we can then work out what c is. So here, using y equals mx plus c, I know m equals 3, x equals 2, and y equals minus 3. So what I end up with is minus 3 equals 3 times 2 plus c. So I end up with minus 3 equals 6 plus c, and then taking the 6 over to the side, end up with c equals minus 9. So then substituting all of this value here and this value here, I can then write down what the equation of the line is going to be. So it's going to be y equals m, which is 3x, minus c, which is minus 9. And so there is my final answer.